All right, what's up, you guys? So I said that I would start making videos on this channel once it got to 100. In case you don't know, of course, this is Jay Dizzle. I used to have a channel called Netterket, which had about 10,000 subs that got taken down about over a year ago. So it is what it is, and we know why it got taken down. But I'm just gonna go ahead and get back on this. So a lot of times, what I've spoken about is the Moorish paradigm and why it doesn't make sense and why it's definitely anti-black or anti-African. So I came across this video. I want to show you this video. I'm going to kind of do my reaction to it, and I'm going to show you some things that kind of just consist with what these Moorish really feel about our people. So this is a video that I found on the Young Turks, and it's called "SWAT Team Removes Sovereign Citizen from Woman's House." So in case you don't know about the rise of the Moors and the sovereign citizen and what these Moors think or whatever, how they feel, you're going to see an insight of it in this video. And then I'm going to show you one of the biggest documents that they love to use, which is the Peace and Friendship Treaty of 1787. I'm going to show you a very interesting portion or article of that treaty. But first, let's go ahead and get into this video.
Homelessness, finally was able to save enough money to buy her dream home in Newark, New Jersey. But unfortunately, she was targeted by a member of an extremist group known as the Moorish Sovereign Citizens, who broke into her home, literally changed the locks, and claimed that the house belonged to them. Let's take a look at the video, which has some more details into what happened.
Someone decided that they wanted my house, so they sawed off the locks, put their own locks on, and he's now occupying the home. And we are out here. I've just been waiting out here with the cops at the neighbor's house while the SWAT team plans to move in and remove him. Yeah, that's been my day. How's yours?
It's just insane. So SWAT had to be called in, as you can see. The woman in the video and the victim in this case is Shanetta Little. And the SWAT team had to negotiate with this guy, get him to leave the home. But this story did lead to people wanting to know a little more about this extremist group, because oftentimes when we talk about extremist groups, especially sovereign citizens, we think of groups of white men. But in this case, we're talking about a group of black men who feel that the laws don't really apply to them. And they have similar reasoning that you get from sovereign citizens who are white, but there's a racial component to it as well. So let me get to that.
Now, before we get to that, here's what I want you to understand. Because a lot of times when you hear these Moors speak of certain things of sovereignty and how they could the right to travel, they don't need a license to travel, they don't need to have tabs on their cars, they don't need to pay taxes, they could just commandeer homes, they could do all these different things. What they do is they'll put it in a paradigm as if it's because they're Moors that they get these types of privileges. And I've stated before plenty of times in the past that no, these are not Moorish um, principles. They're not. And these are actually principles derived from white supremacy. This is something I've said plenty of times in the past, because they make it seem like, yes, because we're Moors, we can challenge the jurisdiction, we can drive without plates, we could do all this crazy stuff. And I've had conversations, even with people I know, who started to adopt Moorish um, ideology. And I've told, like, this is not a Moorish thing, right to travel. Now, has there been cases ruled on the right to travel? I believe yes, there has been, but they weren't by Moors, and they weren't because they're Moors. But at the end of the day, it's really more hassle than it's worth, even if you could pull it off. So the idea that a lot of these Moors um, claim they can do things, or they have different rights and privileges that we don't have because we're not Moors, it's just bullshit. This is not even exclusively theirs or even originally theirs. This actually comes from white supremacist principles, as you're going to see validated, or at least even further articulated on this program on the Young Turks. No, Young Turks, something else I want you to pay attention to. Just remember the Young Turks, because that's going to be significant in the future as well.
So Little was a victim of a ploy known as paper terrorism. a favorite tactic of an extremist group that is one of the fastest growing, according to government experts and watchdog organizations, known as the Moorish sovereign citizen movement, and loosely based around a theory that black people are foreign citizens bound only by arcane legal systems. It encourages followers to violate existent laws in the name of empowerment. So, by the way, as you guys could see from the video, Little herself is a black woman, and she says that they claim to be about black liberation and opportunity and uplifting black people, but he is literally oppressing me and taking what's mine as a black woman. So this story is
now
just
here's something
insane.
that maybe was lost in translation whenever this information was disseminated, because Moorish people they'll call themselves melanated, they do not call themselves black. So perhaps because the woman is quote unquote black, they felt that they could just steal from her, even though they have the same lineage as her.
But this is clearly an issue across the country, right? The issue of sovereign citizens, not just this particular group. People who literally don't think the law applies to them, and they go around breaking the law. And more often than not, the way law enforcement responds to them just happens to be very different from the way law enforcement responds to everyone else. And I feel like they're almost, in a lot of cases, enabled.
Yeah, well, that's why I think this story has an ironic twist, which I want to get to in a second. But so you guys know, sovereign citizens was originally white, so two different groups now, and in fact, a lot of the sovereign citizens were white supremacists, and it was a nuclear case of white entitlement. We think because we're white, none of the laws should apply to us. We should get to break any law, and the laws are just for minorities and other people.
Taxes don't apply to us, that's another
thing. I don't have to pay my taxes, taxes for black people and stuff. And so now the reality is, it's just a nuclear case of it, but the core of that is in the Republican Party. The rich don't want to pay their taxes. That's why the Republican legislators cut the budget for the IRS. We've told you 1,000 stories about that. And now that the laws are being applied evenly, especially during the pandemic, that's why the right wing's losing their mind. They're like, what? We thought the laws were for other people. Now you're gonna arrest us for breaking into Congress and trying to execute people? Now we're getting political prisoners. Right? And I can give you dozens of examples of that. So that's a cancer that's within the right wing in this country to begin with. Now, interestingly enough, it's jumped to this black group, the Moorish folks. Now, none of this makes any sense. The original movement didn't make any sense. The black version of it makes no sense. Okay, well, if you don't have to follow any of the laws and everything's your ancestral land, why did you take her particular house? Like, and by the way, they have no connection. They don't know each other at all. The guy doesn't explain why that's his ancestral land. Well, you know why? Because he's unbalanced. Of course he's unbalanced. None of this is true. None of this is even remotely true. And so, but by either the white supremacist or the black sovereign citizens logic, if there are any, couldn't we just all go and take the homes in Beverly Hills? Okay, that's it. I'm just taking them.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
That would actually be better. I can actually support that.
Right? I mean, how could you not know that doesn't make any sense? I'm just amazed by people. But now here comes the ironic twist. If black folks start taking people's homes, all of a sudden the law is going to apply.
Well, okay, so that's what I wanted to get to, right? Because as I said earlier, oftentimes with militia groups and sovereign citizens, like the whole Bundy debacle. Right? There's a lot of negotiating going on, guns are drawn, and somehow it seems like the militias get off easy. In this case, the man in question, I'll tell you who he is in just a minute, did face prosecution and some pretty serious criminal charges. The man who entered the house, his name is Hubert A. John of Los Angeles, made a long journey to Newark, New Jersey, was arrested on June 17th and charged with criminal mischief, burglary, criminal trespass, and making terroristic threats. Prosecutors in New Jersey are preparing to take the case before a grand jury, and that's according to a spokesperson with the prosecutor's office in Essex County. And so there are clearly some pretty serious criminal charges for this guy. But going back to this,
so that's the setup right there. So they'll tell you all this. They have jurisdiction over the courts. They have this and that, but they only use these for instances when they can profit or somehow benefit individually. So for all the different things that you've heard these Moors say they could do, they have never used it for the collective benefit of our people. And as you can also see, all the shit is bullshit. Because when it comes down to it, you see, this legal system, this judicial system does not see them different than any of us. So they're not going to go lenient on them and say, oh, okay, well, you're right. We have a treaty that we have to abide by. We're going to get into the treaty in a minute. So therefore, no, you guys are Moors. You're not black. They're not seeing that distinction. Only the Moors see the distinction between being Moorish and being black. No one else sees that. They will be prosecuted. Mr. John Hubert Albert, whatever his name is, regular ex-slave name, they're going to be prosecuted as any other black person would. They're not making any distinction between them being quote unquote Moorish or sovereign or from the Empire of Morocco or any descendancy of Morocco or Moorish descent. That's not going down. It's a setup.
Particular group of sovereign citizens, the Moorish sovereign citizens. Increasingly across the country, sovereign citizens have clashed with the authorities, tied up resources, and frazzled lives in their insistence that laws such as the requirement to pay taxes, obey speed limits, and even obtain simple things like a license for a pet dog do not apply for them. Now, membership in the Moorish citizen, sovereign citizen movement has been driven by the internet into the hundreds of thousands, the Law Center said. On its website, Rise of the Moors, for example, that cited reparations, part of a national conversation about race and equality, as the driving factor for its belief that its members can claim things as their own.
Yeah.
So this is their way of getting the reparations that they feel they're entitled to.
But as you can tell, none of it is attached to reality, because if you're going to do reparations, why would you take it from another black person? That doesn't make any sense. Why'd you go all the way across the country to take that poor woman's house?
Right.
And so there's a right way to do reparations. You could go through political channels, and we should, by the way. But to just randomly grab people's house because of a treaty we signed with the Moors, and we think that we're related to the Moorish people. Well, even that doesn't make sense, because at the time, here we go, the Moors were, that region was occupied by the Ottoman Empire.
Now this is a point that I'm gonna get into a little bit later. And this is a point that I've made plenty of times on my old channel. I've made it on Facebook, I've made it on Black Einstein Radio as well. Look, when they tell you about this Peace and Friendship Treaty of 1787, and they tell you that they have a treaty with America because they're Moroccans, and they use that document, understand, and I've said this plenty of times, in 1787, Morocco was not in the hands of indigenous African Moroccans. It was in the hands and colonized by Ottoman Turk Empire. Why is that significant? Because this dude right here, and listen, I don't agree with everything the Young Turks say. I really don't. There's a lot of things that they say. I know they cap. They're still almost a mainstream media outlet. I don't agree with everything they say. Some of the stuff they say is cap, but facts are facts. And this dude is a Turk. This is what Turks look like. This is what those of the Ottoman Turk Empire looked like. This is the type of person that was in control of Morocco at the time the Peace and Friendship Treaty was written. And we're going to get into that Peace and Friendship Treaty as well. But continue.
The law applied.
Of course it was.
Of course. So Moorish sovereign citizens, I got both bad news and good news for you. I am your new leader. Okay, and I command you to actually.
So the reason he's saying he's the new leader is because he's Turkish. The Young Turks. This dude is from Turkey. He is a descendant of those who were of the Ottoman Turk Empire, who by the time 1787 came about, they've already colonized plenty of West Africa at that time, and they still control Morocco to this day. Now, let me get into something else. That's why he said that. He's capping right with that.
I mean, as long as we're doing nuts.
So let me show you something else then. This is part of the Peace and Friendship Treaty. You know, here's the Peace and Friendship Treaty right here. You can find it online anywhere. This was actually, I found this actually at one of their sites, the RV Bay Publications. Peace and Friendship Treaty, 1787. Morocco and the United States, because just to give you a little bit of history, when America was established in 1776, as any country established themselves, there's a process of different countries acknowledging them as a country. So the first country to acknowledge America, of course, it wasn't England. That's who they defeated. Of course, it wasn't the rest of the European nations, because they were all in cahoots with England, and they probably didn't like the fact that Americans got their own sovereignty over here after defeating the British Empire. The first country to acknowledge them, the United States of America, as a country was Morocco. So the Moors will say yes, because that was us. We acknowledged them, this and that. Well, that wouldn't even make sense if it was true, because why would they acknowledge a country who are enslaving their own fellow African or ethnic group? That wouldn't make sense unless they're saying that they are traitors, which they are by default. But let me scroll down to Article 12 of the Peace and Friendship Treaty. And what does it say? It says, any ship of war belonging to the United States shall be put into our ports. She shall not be examined on any pretense whatsoever. So any ship belonging to the United States that goes into their ports, they're not going to look at it. Why? Well, maybe this next sentence will have something to do with it. Even though she should have fugitive slaves on board. So they're not going to check the cargo of any ships coming in, even though it should have slaves on board, nor shall the governor or commander of the place compel them to be brought on shore in any pretext, nor require any payment for them. In other words, part of the Peace and Friendship Treaty agreement was that, hey, if you guys want to have slave ships and you guys want to take slaves as cargo off our ports or bring them onto our ports or whatnot, we're not going to have any problem with that. We're good with that. Why would they make such an agreement if this was not, like I said, an agreement between indigenous Moroccans and the United States? This was an agreement with people that look like this guy right here,
right? Moorish law
and the United States, because they were in cahoots in order to enslave Africans, as they still do in Morocco, as they do in Libya now that Gaddafi's gone, and as they do in other North African countries that have been taken over by and still colonized by Arabs, white Arabs who happen to be Muslims. So it's no coincidence that anytime you look at anything Moorish, it's anti-African. It's not a coincidence that those who helped King Leopold destroy the Congolese, they also had fezzes on. Those who helped Mussolini invade Ethiopia also had fezzes on. Those who, if you look at old pictures of ships before they sailed from Africa to here, the ones that were in charge of procuring and organizing and loading these ships, they also were Islamic black people. Those who have aligned themselves with European powers. It's not a coincidence that even the Moors will tell you that they helped Christopher Columbus navigate over to the United States, and that's when the transatlantic slavery started. It's not a coincidence that anytime there has been a struggle for our people with freedom, there has never been Moorish people that's helped. It's not a coincidence. Even referenced in a movie called Black Snake, which was a movie based in the Caribbean. Well, who were the ones that were helping the white people in the Caribbean enslave our people? They were Moors. So this is what we're dealing with. This is why people like Taharka Bey. Let's go ahead and go to Taharka Bey's channel real quick. Let's check it out. Moorish World TV. And all you'll see him do on this channel, right, is go against everything black. Everything on his channel is about disrespecting black people and black movements. That's all he does on his channel. Why? Because that's just by default what these Moors do. They go against anything black. That's why this Moorish sovereign group had no problem commandeering a black woman's house. Out of all the houses they could have commandeered in LA, they decided to take over and victimize a black woman and try to steal her house. They didn't go to some White House, to some European's house. They didn't go to some rich person that was part of the oppressive class's house. No, because they actually hate us more than they hate Europeans. I'm not even sure they hate Europeans. So this is just, I just wanted to make this video just to kind of show you, that not only is a lot of this conscious community shit, they're clowns. These conscious community clowns. That's what it is. This whole shit's a clown show now, and all these different sects of people that have come up through these ranks, they're clowns, and especially these Moors. These Moors are anti-black, anti-African, and they don't make any sense whatsoever with what they say. The peace and friendship treaty that they always want to use, and they've used this plenty of times. I'm sure you've heard them use it. They use it because they know you're not going to actually read it. Because when you read it, what you'll realize is this was something that was written not between black Moors and Europeans. It wasn't them saying, hey, we accept you because we helped establish you. No, these were white Turks, white Muslims, Caucasians that were saying, hey, you want to enslave black people? Well, we already are doing it, and we could bridge and make a friendship based upon that. And with that, we will allow you to port and dock your stolen merchandise, even though they're human flesh in the form of African slaves, and you can leave here with them, and we won't breach your ship, or you can pull up with stolen Africans if you need to port before you bounce. It was an agreement between one white to another white to enslave us. And that's all it is. And that's all you expect out of these Moors. And that's why I don't respect these Moors. So that's all I wanted to say, you guys. Jay Dizzle, you already know. Black Guy Stand Radio will probably be revamping Black Guy Stand Radio at some time. You might see more videos that I'll post from this channel as well, going into my thoughts on certain things and maybe some interviews and things like that. And the reason why is because it's needed. Like when my channel was shut down a little over a year ago, it was shut down because it was just too much for YouTube. They didn't like it. Maybe I was a little bit too hot on how I was naming some of my videos or whatnot, but they don't want to hear it. And all you see now in this conscious community, with the exception of a few people, a few of these very good black media channels, you're seeing mostly clown shit, because that's what we support. Say no disrespect to Sonetta, but a lot of this shit is clown shit now. This Moorish shit, the Moorish, Moroccan, Moorish World TV clown shit. The young pharaohs and these other clowns that only act as agents against our people, they get a lot of viewerships because they get help by white supremacists, for one, and because our people like the Jerry Springer type of, buffoonery that's going on, and we don't like to support the real. So prove them wrong. Prove it wrong by liking this, subscribing to this channel when you see this. And if anybody want to have any dialogue, whether you agree or not, I'm with the shits. So that's all I want to say. Peace.